Alright guys, now that we have baked the ID map, we are ready to actually create some textures for our military radio. One quick thing to note: while I was working on this tutorial, Substance Painter got updated to version 2018, and that is the version that I'm using right now to create my materials. The version I was using for baking this asset was the previous version, but that shouldn't make much of a difference. You should still be able to easily follow everything I was talking about earlier. Okay, that being said, let's take a look at the materials, and we're going to start out with the material for the body, which is going to be a green plastic material that has some wear and tear on it. And the way that we are going to do this is we're going to create this material with a layered approach. So we're going to start out creating multiple layers with different material attributes on top of one another, and then group them to create the material that is going to be applied to the body. It's very much like working in Photoshop, where you create a layer and then add some paint information to that layer, and then create another layer on top of it with scratches, for example, and then create another layer with wear and tear or color variation and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, by using that approach, we're going to end up with a bunch of layers over here in the layer tab of Substance Painter. And like I was saying, that is going to give us the final material at the end. So let's get started. So we're going to start with the rubber material for the body that we are going to create, and in order to do that, we are going to start out with a fill layer. So to create a fill layer, just go to your layer stack and click on this button that says add a fill layer, and that adds a fill layer to your layer stack. And once this is added, you can modify the different attributes of the material. So for example, if you want to change the color, just click on base color, and then you can change the color to your liking. Since this is going to be a green plastic material, I'm going to set it to something like this. And then up here in the material tab, you can see that color, metalness or metallic, roughness, normal, and height are enabled, which means this material is going to affect all of these attributes. Since this is going to be some type of a plastic or rubber material for the body, I already know that I don't need the metallic attribute. So let's just turn this off, because I'm not gonna make this a metal. I'm not gonna set this to 1 down here. I'm gonna leave it at 0. So let's just turn it off entirely, because we don't need it. And the same goes for the normal map of this material. I don't need this to affect the normal channel, just because I'm not gonna add any normal information on this material. So now that we have our basic color, let's actually refine that a little bit. Click on the color, and then let's try to type in some values here. I'm going to go with 0.23 for the green channel, actually 0.023, and then 0.009 for the blue channel, and that gives it a nice dark green color. And since I have the roughness attribute enabled up here, I can also affect the roughness of my object. And like I was saying, I want this to be some type of plastic or rubber, so let's give it a roughness of around 0.32. That seems to be working pretty well as a base for this material, and then we can continue to add some more material attributes to this. Okay, now that we have the base attributes set, what we want to do is we want to work with this material some more. It looks pretty boring at the moment. It's just a color with a roughness value, and to add some wear and tear to this, we are going to add a filter to this material. And to do that, just right click on the layer and then select add filter, and that allows you to plug in a filter into the material. Now if you bring up the shelf over here, you can see that all the resources that Substance Painter comes with are accessible through the shelf. So if you go to filters, you can see all the filters that Substance Painter comes with. And I want to make this a rough material, and there are a few filters for that. So let's just look for finish rough, and then that brings up a filter called Matte Finish Rough, and I can just left click on this and drag it up here into the filter tab, and once I've done that, you can see it actually updates the material right away. Another way to do this is to just go up here, left click on this button, and then you can just type in Finish Rough, just like you could in the shelf down here, and that will bring up the Matte Finish Rough filter. And then we're just going to add this to our material. And now we're going to modify this a little bit, play with the attributes. First of all, we're going to increase the scale to the maximum, which is 16. And then we're going to do a similar thing for the grunge scale, but I think 7 is a pretty good value for that. And then the brushing intensity needs to come way down because it is really intense right now. So let's just set this to 0.15, and the warp maybe something like 25. It's not that important of a value. And then you can see that gives it a nice rough feel. It basically makes it feel like it has been weathered a little bit. And that's it for the matte finish rough filter. But since this is looking too uniform, like metal almost, I want to add a warp filter on top of it. So let's right click here, click on add filter, and then like I did before, we can just type in warp, drag this up here. Actually, there was a wrong one. Let me click up here and then just select warp, and that adds the warp filter to it. Now you should be able to actually select the filter here, type in warp, and then drag it up here. Yeah, so that's another way to do it. And if you play with the intensity slider of that warp filter, you can say that it's warping or distorting the details quite a bit. Like you can see that they're pretty uniform right now, and then once you add the warp filter, you can see it distorts it. And that's actually what the icon is showing you for this filter as well. And as a value for the intensity here, I think I'm just going to use something like 10. And then I'm going to be done with this base material, the green base material. So let's just rename this to rubber_base. And then let's move on to the next layer, where we are going to add some scratches to this material. Let's add some scratches to our model, and in order to do that, we are going to create a new layer, a new fill layer. So let's click on the add a fill layer button, and then double click on the name of the layer and rename it to scratches. And I'm going to just leave it like this for now. I'm going to come back to this later, but I want to add a black mask to it, which means it's going to make this entire layer invisible for now, and then make sure that the mask is selected. So left click on it so that it's highlighted in blue, and then right click on it and click on add fill layer. And if we do that, we can plug in a grayscale node in here, which is what we want to do to add the scratches. So just left click on the grayscale node and then type in grunge scratches, and then you have different scratches to select, and the one that I want is called grunge scratches rough. So let's click on that, and you can see that it's adding those scratches to it. And if we go in here and type in grunge scratches, you can see that you can find the node here as well. So if you want to do it like this, you can just drag it over and it does the same thing, just like I've shown you before. Moving forward, I'm just probably going to use what's over here to select things. And now that we have the node plugged in, we can modify its attributes quite a bit. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to change the projection from UV projection to triplanar projection. Now, when you have UV projection enabled, you can see that the scratches are being, they are not consistent across the UV seams. And by changing it from UV projection to triplanar projection, that actually fixes it. You can see that the scratches are going over the UV seams right now. So if we press F1, and then that brings up the UV view, you can see that when using triplanar projection, most of the scratches go across UV seams. There's still some issues here and there, like for example, this one is not being properly continued. or this one here, but it definitely does a better job than using UV projection, which introduces seams at every UV seam, compared to the triplanar projection, which gets rid of some of those seams. Now, unfortunately, the scale is off a little bit right now, and we can modify that with the global UV scale. So if I press F2 to go into the viewport mode again and then mess with the UV scale, you can see that increasing this makes the scratches smaller, and I think I'm going to set this to something like 1.25 to start out with, and then I'm going to try to modify the size some more using the attributes in the grayscale map. First thing that I want to change is the quantity. Right now there's a lot of scratches, and I think we're going to be good with just 0.5 as scratch quantity, but then I do want to increase the tiling. I actually want to set this to the maximum amount, so let's set this to 6. And right now these guys are a little wide for me. I want them to be smaller, so let's set this to maybe 0.066. Obviously there's a few more attributes that you can mess with, and they change the look and feel of those scratches. I think I'm going to leave most of it to their default values. I do want to increase the tiling of those spots to something like 3. That makes them a little smaller. And then I want to increase the dust intensity from 0.5 to 1. But I do want to increase the tiling here to 16 so that those dust pockets are actually a lot smaller than they have been before. And I think these are most of the values that I want to modify. Obviously right now all the scratches are white, because what this grayscale map is doing is just influencing the mask of my white layer. So let's go back to the actual white layer, and then in here you can see that all these material attributes are still enabled. So right now it's affecting the color, the metalness, the roughness, the normal, and the height. And I don't really want it to affect the color, and I don't want it to affect the metalness. I only want it to affect the roughness and the height of my material. If I turn those two off, or if I turn off color, metal, and normal, you can see that nothing is really visible anymore, and that's because the height value is still at 0. Now, just like in real life, I want those scratches to cut into the material a little bit, and to do that you can just change the height value to a negative value. And obviously this is all way too strong, so you got to be really, really subtle. Maybe use something like 0.015, and that looks like a pretty decent value for those scratches. We don't want them to be too strong. And then right now they are actually quite smooth and thus reflective, but I want them to be dull. In order to make them dull, we need to increase their roughness value of this layer. So maybe use something like 0.7 for this. And yeah, honestly, I think that looks pretty good. I don't want the scratches to be overbearing. I want them to be fairly subtle, and I want them to have the right size. So I think this works pretty well for the scratches, and let's just move on to the next layer. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make the edges of this object, or the edges of this material, a little bit more rougher. Right now all of it has pretty much the same roughness, and I want the edges to be a little bit more dull. Just like in real life, when an object has sharp corners, that are the areas where it's being exposed to its environment at the most. And that means that these are going to be the areas where the material is going to be abused the most, which usually means that it becomes more dull. So in order to make those edges a little bit more dull, let's add another fill layer. So just click on the Add Fill Layer button, and then just like before, we're going to right click on it and click on Add Black Mask. Then select the mask, so make sure it's selected and highlighted in blue, and then right click on it and click on Add Fill. That allows you to plug in a grayscale node. And for this one, we're going to add the metal edge where node. So just type that in, metal edge, and then select the metal edge where, double click on it. That will load the metal edge wear in here. And as you can see on the material, all the material attributes are enabled, which is fine for now, but in the end I'm gonna only have it affect the roughness. I'm gonna leave the color on for now so that it visualizes what this filter is doing a little bit better. So right now all of the white areas are the areas that we are affecting. So let's go to the metal edge wear filter and select it. And then what we can do is actually play with the parameters of that filter a little bit. It has a lot of parameters, as you can see. It's got all these different ones, and all I really want to do is increase the wear level a little bit, maybe set it to 0.83. And then I also want to fade those edges a little bit more, and can usually do that with the edge smoothness. So let's set this to something like 1.65 or something like that. And you can see that there are a ton of other values. I really don't want to mess with these too much. We're not using triplanar right now, so it's not using this thing here, which is fine. So yeah, just leave everything else to its default values. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the layer itself, turn off color, and then we are going to modify the roughness value, and right now it's at 0.3, but I want it to be 0.5, and then you can see if I increase this a lot it makes it really dull, but I want this to be still somewhat reflective, just less reflective than the flat areas. So as you can see, it gives it a pretty nice feel. You know, it looks like these edges have been used a little bit. There's some wear and tear on those edges. They're a lot duller than the rest of the surface, and that's all that I wanted to achieve with this material. So now that we have that, let's just rename that to edge_roughness, and then we're going to move on to the next layer. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is I want to add some color variation on this green material. I want to have some areas where there are some black patches. So basically some areas where the color has been worn off by wear and tear. And in order to do that, just like we did before, we're going to add a new fill layer. And then we're going to change the base color to something pretty dark, maybe 0.011 for RGB. And also the roughness, I want this to be pretty dull. So let's set it to 0.75. Now we are going to add a mask to this as well. So let's just click on add black mask. And then what we're going to do is, with the mask selected, right click on it, and this time we are going to add a generator. And you can see that there's a generator tab that comes up now. So just left click it, and then you can just type in mask builder and then select the mask builder generator. And it says Mask Builder Legacy up here. You can obviously also select it through the shelf down here by typing in Mask Builder and then, just like before, dragging it up here. Okay, cool. So you can see that this is adding some nice wear and tear to the edges. I don't want it to be applied as uniformly, so let's go into the values for this generator and then let's see what we are going to do. Obviously there's a lot of values again. First one is just a level value up here, which is the overall dirtiness, I guess. So let's just set this to 0.2 and maybe increase the contrast just a little bit to 0.43. Doesn't really make much of a difference. And then I think I want a little bit more grunge, so maybe 0.35 or something like that. And then you can also modify the values for the grunge. I think I'm gonna leave AO at 1. And then I think I'm also going to leave all of this the way it is. And then I'm gonna actually add a top-down gradient. So let's increase this all the way, maybe something like 0.92. And then let's bring down the overall curvature value to something like 0.3 to counteract this uniform distribution of the black patches. I don't want them to be everywhere. but just in certain spots. And I do feel like the values that I'm using right now are actually pretty good. Looks like I don't need to do much more. I don't see any major seams, which is good. I'm sure there are some, but they're really difficult to notice. So yeah, that's pretty good. So let's just leave it at this for the black plastic wear layer. Let's move on to the next layer. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add another layer on top of the black plastic wear, and the one that we're going to create is a green plastic wear layer. So let's just add a new fill layer and rename this to green plastic wear. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to give this a slightly different color than the base material, a slightly different green. Then I'm going to use a similar mask that this black plastic wear is using. And since this is on top of it, it's going to get rid of some of the black spots because I feel like it's a little much right now. Don't want it to be as much, but I want to introduce another color, which is what this layer is going to achieve. For now, I'm going to leave it at white to see what the mask is doing that I'm going to add a little bit better. So turn off metalness, normal and hate for this, and then just click on add black mask, and then with the mask selected we are going to add a generator, and we are going to add the mask builder generator in here. And now that we have that, let's mess with the values a little bit, bring the levels down to 0.2, bring the contrast up just a little bit, maybe 0.43 or something like that. And then let's see, grunge, we probably might want to bring up a little bit, maybe 0.5. And then let's see, what else are we going to do? So there's a scale value for the grunge. So right now you can see that, you know, this texture that's being used has a pretty big scale, so it's getting rid of a lot of the white, and by increasing the scale we're kind of counteracting that a little bit. So maybe set this to 5, and then in the AO tab, let's see, we've got the noisiness value here. Maybe bring this down a little bit so that these spots get a little smaller. Bring this to like 0.5 or something like that. Let's see, I want to mess with some of the other values. Let's look at the curvature. Can leave the global value at 1, and then let's go into these. We want to have some different values for the convex and concave range so that it's counteracting the black. You can see that the black is already coming through a little bit, and the white is overlaying on the black material right now. So let's just look at this, look at the convex range, and maybe bring this down a little bit so that more of the black material is going to come through. And can leave the contrast at 0 and then mess with the concave range a little bit. I kind of want to bring this way up, maybe 0.65 or something like that. And let's see, what is the smoothness doing? Yeah, I think we need to mess with that value just a little bit so that these seams are going away a little bit. And I think 0.1 or maybe 0.2, 0.15 is actually good enough. So let's just leave it at 0.15, and then let's see, what do we have here? The level boost. Yeah, I think I want to bring this way up. Maybe 0.65. And that's quite a lot, and it's going to get rid of a lot of the black areas, but you can see that there's still some of the black areas that are coming through, which is fine. Maybe bring the smoothness back down to 0.1, and you can see a lot of these values are also like counteracting each one. And since this is just a color value, it's not super important. I think this is going to give us a pretty good result, but let's go back and change the color to the actual color that I want to use. So let's set the red to 0, green to something like 0.021, and then blue to 0.19. And then you can see that this second green color that we're adding to our base material is overriding some of the black spots. It's introducing a new color. It's making it look a little bit more natural, and I like what that looks like. Let's see, what else do we need to do here? I think I want to turn off roughness for this layer because the black roughness layer is already affecting the roughness enough, and I only want this to affect the color. So you can see that this change is pretty subtle, but it is adding, it is introducing another color, and it's getting rid of a few of those black spots, which I like, because I felt like the wear and tear was a little strong. Whereas right now, if you look at some of these crevices here, you can see that it brings back some of the original color. Like, I don't want this object to be super weathered, but I want it to have a decent weathering to it, and I think that this achieves the effect that I do want to have on that material. So let's move on to the next layer. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is add some discolorization spots for the plastic material. In order to do that, we're going to add another fill layer, and then we're going to right click on it, and we're going to select add black mask, and with the mask selected, right click on it and then click on add fill. I know this is cutting off down here. Let me actually bring this up a little bit, and then you can see I'm just selecting add fill here. And then in this grayscale tab, I want to bring in a noise generator, and the one that I want to use is called fractal sum. So just type in fractal, and that brings up the different fractal noise patterns, and the one that I want to use is fractal sum 3. So let's just drag this in here, and then you can see that unfortunately this is causing some seams, and like I was showing you earlier, the way to fix this is to switch it to triplanar projection. And then we want to bring up the UV scale quite a bit, maybe to something like 60, and then you can see that adds some nice noise everywhere. I do want to modify the look of this a bit, obviously, so let me just add a levels adjustment layer to the whole thing. So select the mask, right click on it, and then click on add levels, and that does add a levels adjustment layer. And then for the input gamma for this value, I'm going to set it to 0.92, and then this we're going to bring all the way over, maybe something like 0.261. Or 0.26 or something like that, and then we want to invert the whole thing. And as you can see, let me actually bring this back. You can see that the levels is clamping the amount of spots, and it's bringing the number down to a reasonable value. So I'm going to just set it to 0.61. I've played with these values before, so obviously I know the values that work well, but you can definitely find out yourself by just dragging these sliders around. So just something to keep in mind. I think that's a nice amount of spots on the plastic. I do not like the way that they're looking color-wise right now, so let's go back to the main layer and actually turn off metal, normal, and hate. I only want this to affect the color and the roughness. And let's just set the roughness to something like 0.6. Doesn't really make much of a difference in that angle. It's hard to see, but it has an effect. So let's set this to 0.6, and then the color, I want something more yellowish or something like that. So let's see. Let's do 147 here, and then 134, and then 115. And that's like a slightly better color to use here, I feel like. And yeah, now we have some nice discolorization spots. They're not super visible, but they are going to be visible in the final render. which is cool. And one final thing that we're going to do is we're going to group all of these layers. So let's just shift select all of them. So first of all, we're going to rename this layer to spots this color. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all of them, and just like in Photoshop, you can group them by pressing Ctrl G. If I undo, another way to do this is to just click this button, add a folder, and then shift select all of this and drag it in here. And that's basically doing the same thing, but I like using the Ctrl G hotkey. And then we're going to call this material green plastic base. And yeah, this is the base material that we're going to use for all these like green plastic surfaces. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next thing. Okay guys, now that we have our green plastic base material, we are going to create a rubber material for all the rubber parts of my object. Let's just turn off the visibility on the green material, and then let's create another new fill layer for the base of the rubber material. And we might as well call this rubber underscore base. And this material is going to be very similar to the green plastic material. It's just going to have a few attributes that are slightly different. Now for this layer, I only want this to affect the color and roughness, and color is going to be black basically. Roughness is going to be 0.3, and then just like we did previously, we're going to add a filter, and then we're going to add a matte finish rough filter. So just select this, and then scale we're going to set to 3. I think on the other one it was at 4, so let's just choose a different scale here. Let's see, grunge we can probably leave at 1. Brushing intensity, should probably bring this down just like we did on our green plastic material. Warp we can leave at 20. That looks good as a base. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add another filter, and then we're going to add the warp filter. And intensity we're going to do 0.9. Or actually intensity 9. And you can see it just distorts everything a little bit. Gets rid of this metallic look. Okay, that's cool. And I think next we're going to add another fill layer, and we're going to add a dirt layer on top of this. Same as before, I only want color and roughness. And for the color, we're going to make this a brown color. So let's go with 0.27 on red, 0.23 on green, and then 0.18. And then we're going to set the roughness really high. I want this to be really dull, so maybe something like 0.9. And then we are going to add a black mask, and then we're going to add a generator. And just like we did previously, we're going to add a new generator here, and this one we're going to use the dirt generator, mg dirt. So let's just select this. And this adds the dirt generator, making the rubber quite dirty, which is nice. Now I want to mess with some of these values. Let's see, what do we have here? I want to use triplanar on this, and then I'm going to leave this at 0.75, I think. I think that's a pretty good value. Contrast 0.5 is good as well, actually. This we can leave at 0.5, doesn't really make much of a difference here anyway. Grunge amount, should probably bring this down a little bit. Maybe 0.15. Something like this looks good. Custom grunge we leave off, and then just like we did on the other material, we're just going to bring down the edge masking to like 0.5. And that is going to be the base for the dirt. Don't really need much more for this. Just makes the crevices quite a little bit more dirty, which is nice. Next we're going to add some scratches on top, just like we did on our green base material. Let me actually close the texture set list. If you right click up here, you can access the different panels. So if you want to see the texture set list, you can just click it. I don't need it now. I think I opened it earlier in between video recording. So let me just close it for consistency. And then we're going to add another fill layer. I'm going to call it scratches. And this one, just like the other scratches layer, just going to be roughness and height. Roughness is going to be around 0.7, and then this one negative 0.015, and then we are going to add a mask. Actually, let me see. Right now you can't really see the option up here, but we're just going to go to add black mask. Bring this down a little bit. So add black mask, and we've done this before with the mask selected. Right click, click on add fill, and then we're gonna add the grunge scratches, and we're gonna select grunge scratches rough, and you can see that it adds the scratches to our object. We want to make sure that we set this to triplanar projection and make the scale maybe 1.5, and then we're gonna mess with the attributes in here. So let's just see what we get. Balance 0.5, that seems good to me, so let's just leave that at 0.5. Contrast 0 is fine too. Scratch quantity, probably want to reduce that again to 0.5, and then the tiling we are going to increase to around 6. Gives us a lot more scratches, which is cool. Blur can stay at 0. Width, I want them to be much smaller again. Something like this is probably good. Don't want these scratches to be super intense. Length can stay at 1, masking can stay at 0.25, dirtiness at 0.5 is good too. Double scratch we're going to leave as default. Intensity 1 is cool too. More tiling on the spots is better, so let's set this to 3. And the dust intensity we can increase to 1 to get more of these things here. And then we want to crank up the tiling to 16. So it gives us some like nice noise basically. So let's take a look at these scratches. Maybe bring the tiling down again. Does it look like at 1? Trying to get a feel for the size of these scratches, because the rubber material is mostly going to be here in the back. Which is cool, but I just want to make sure that the scale for these scratches is good. Maybe we'll bring this up to 0.6 on the quantity. But I think this is good for now for just the scratches. So let's keep it at that and move on to the final layer, which is the edge roughness. So let's add a fill layer, rename this to edge underscore roughness. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off everything but the roughness and set the roughness to 0.5. Makes it nice and dull. And then we're going to add a black mask, and with the mask selected we're going to add a fill, and in the fill we're going to do mg metal edge wear, which is this guy here. And then let's see what we're going to do. Going to bring up the wear level. I think 0.83 was the other one that we were using. Contrast really doesn't do anything, so let's just leave it at 0.5. I'm going to turn on triplanar. Contrast we're going to leave at 0.5. Grunge, maybe 0.25. Yeah, that feels good. Grunge scale 4 is fine. Edge smoothness, maybe 1.65. And AO masking 0.5. Curvature weight 1. Let's look at this some more. I think that looks pretty good for a worn rubber material. It really makes these edges nice and rough and keeps the flat surfaces slightly reflective, which is what I want for this rubber. So now that we have all the layers, let's group them together. So let's go into the layer stack, shift select all of them, Control G, and then we're going to call this black_rubber base. And now we have our green material and then the rubber material, and then we can go ahead and create the next one. Okay guys, next we are going to create a metal material that we are going to use up to break up the green plastic. So basically these top pieces here, I want them to have a different material than the body. I don't want all of it to be green. And we're going to use a smart material that comes with Substance Designer for these plates. So just go to your smart material, tabs in the shelf, and then click in here, and then just type in gun. And a few different gun materials are going to come up. The one that you want to select is called Steel Gun Matte. We're going to drag this over here, and then once it is over here in our layer panel, you can just click on the folder to open up the different components. And you can see that all the way at the top there's a sharpen layer, which just sharpens everything, and that's pretty cool. And then there are basically the scratches layer that just is for the edge scratches, and the base metal layer that gives you the base metal material. I want to modify the look of those scratches. So in order to do that, click on the mask for the scratches, and then you can see that this one has a sharpen layer as well. And we're going to just reduce this to 0, or we can actually delete it since we are already using a sharpen layer on top. And then we're going to go to the metal edge wear generator, and then we're going to mess with the values here in the metal edge wear. First of all, the wear level I want to increase to probably something around 0.75, and then the contrast I want to increase as well to probably 0.5. We're not using triplanar, so this slider doesn't make a difference. And then I'm going to bring the grunge down quite a bit to maybe 0.3 to make it less noisy. And that's starting to look pretty interesting. Let me increase the scale here. Maybe something like 4 seems to be working pretty well. No custom grunge. And then the edge smoothness slider really brings in more wear and tear on the corners. So I think I quite like what this looks like. So let's just set this to 3.1 for now, and the rest we can leave as is. The other thing that I want to do is I want to increase the specularity or the reflectiveness of the metal underneath. So in order to do that, go back to the scratches layer itself, so make sure it's selected, and then go to the advanced parameters, and here is the metal roughness slider. If we crank this all the way up, it becomes really dull, and if we set it to 0, it becomes really reflective. Now I think something like maybe 0.075 is a good compromise, and I think I'm going to leave it here for now, because we are getting to the point where we need to see these materials interact with one another, and we want to see the material break up on the mesh, because otherwise it becomes hard to tweak these materials. So maybe we will start by actually assigning some materials to a few different pieces before we are moving forward with material creation. Let's take a look at how to assign the materials that we have created to the ID map that we've baked. So if we go up here and change this to ID mask, you can see the different colored materials that I'm planning on using. And this looks pretty good, but I don't think it's going to be the final material distribution. So let's just switch back to material up here. And if you press B on your keyboard, you can cycle through the different attributes. As you know, if you press M, it goes back to material view. So let's go to, actually, let's rename this to dark metal. And then what we're going to take a look at is the green plastic base material. Now, in order to assign all of this to a ID map, you're just going to right click on the folder, and then we are going to go to add mask with color selection. So click that, and then you see that it brings up a color selection down here, and then you can click on pick color, and then you can just click on your mesh, and it will select the green color to it will assign this material to the green color. Let's do the same for the black rubber base. So right click on it, and then we're going to go to add mask with color selection. Let me bring this down a little bit. So add mask with color selection, pick color, and then we're going to select the yellow material for it. Then you can see now this has been assigned to the yellow parts. And then we're going to go to the dark metal, right click, add mask with color selection, click on pick color, and we are going to select the orange materials. Now, as you can see, this looks pretty good. However, there are some minor issues, especially where the materials meet. You can see that there are some white lines in between the materials. And the way to get rid of these lines is to play with the tolerance slider here. So if you bring this tolerance slider down, and or if you bring it up, you can see that it takes over, or it takes away more and more of those lines. And if you bring it down, those lines become bigger. So basically, when you mess with that slider, it increases the tolerance on the different color values that it's going to assign to your material. So if we go back to the ID view, you can see that where these two materials meet, you can see that the colors become a little muddy. They start bleeding into each other, which is not ideal. And like I was saying, a way to counteract that is just to increase the tolerance, and it will sample more of those colors that are bleeding into one another. Hopefully this was a explanation that helped you understand how this works. But like I was saying, I do want to play with some of these values, and as you can see, if you go too high, let's say you go from 0.4 to 0.5, you can see it takes over the rubber material, which you really don't want. So you probably want to keep this one at like maybe 0.45 or something like that. Yeah, this seems to be a pretty good value for it. So let's set this to 0.45. Let's go to the black rubber, increase the tolerance here. And then this one, we can kind of bring all the way up, which is pretty cool. Maybe 0.9. Actually, in that case, it starts taking over this, so maybe 0.85. 0.86. Let's see when it starts taking over. 0.87. So let's keep this at 0.86. And you can also play with the hardness value here. But I feel like if you leave this at 1, that usually gives the best result, and then the output value kind of blends the material, so that means you should leave it at 1. And then let's close this and go to the green material, and here as well we want to increase the tolerance, and you can see at around 0.8, 0.81 it starts bleeding into other things. So I think 0.8 is a pretty good value for this. And as you can see, things are starting to look pretty cool. And the materials are assigned to their parts, but obviously the material distribution is not how I want it to be entirely. This piece I want that to use the black metal material that we've just created. Same with this guy, and yeah, I think I will eventually have to go back to Maya and fix these things. Okay, so now that we know how to use the ID mask to assign materials, another thing I want to show you is how to manually assign materials, and it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to turn off the dark metal material, and I'm just going to go back to my green plastic base here. I'm going to delete the material assignment by removing the effect. So basically, if you select the color selection and click the X button that says remove effect, it'll do just that. And then all we end up with is this black mask here, which is not really useful because, or it is useful, but it just, since the mask is black, it's hiding the material on my entire mesh. In order to paint the material back in, what we need to do is go into paint mode by pressing 1 or selecting the paintbrush over here, and then I can start painting. Right now my brush is set to a black color, which means if I draw using left click, nothing's going to happen. However, if you press X on your keyboard to invert the color, it turns to white, and then you can paint the material back in using the left mouse button. And then obviously you can change the brush size by pressing Ctrl and using the right mouse button and then sliding the mouse from left to right. And if you slide it up and down with Ctrl and right mouse button pressed, it changes the brush hardness. So now you can go in and paint in this green material wherever you want it to appear. And this becomes helpful when you want to combine the two techniques to fix errors. So let me go back here into the mask and then actually add a black mask to remove all of my paint. And then I'm going to right click again and do add mask with color selection. Go to pick color like previously and select that green color. Now let's check out what's going on here. So you can see that the tolerance is really low. There's some errors here and there, and if I want to manually fix them, I can do that by selecting the mask, right clicking, and then click on add paint. That adds a paint layer on top of your color selection layer, and then I can go in with my brush and paint over these errors to get rid of these white spots. Like I was saying, the easiest way to do it is to just play with the tolerance value, but if you do need to go in and actually manually paint it out, that's an easy way to do it. Another cool feature is this stuff over here, the polygon fill mode. So let me actually get rid of the color selection layer, and now you can only see the stuff that I've painted in. But let's say I wanted to select polygons instead of manually having to paint things to assign materials, and that's possible using the polygon select mode. So just select it over here, and then in order to make this easier, you want to press F1 on your keyboard to switch between, or to bring up the UV view. If you press F1, that's a split view, F2 is just a 3D view, and F3 is just a UV view. So press F1, and then when you are in polygon fill mode, you can just go in, click on the polygons, and the polygons you select will automatically be filled with a white color, which is really helpful. Additionally, on top of that, you can just go into the UV mode and drag select by using the left mouse button, and that way you can really quickly and easily assign materials. So, like I was saying, this is a pretty easy way to do this, can save you a lot of time and is very helpful for just really being precise when assigning materials. Okay, we're going to go back into paint mode. I'm going to press F2 on my keyboard, and then I'm going to delete this paint effect, and then I'm going to add a mask with color selection again and pick my green color. And like I did before, I'm just going to set this to 0.8. And for now I can't see any errors, but if later on I see more errors, I will I can fix them using the techniques that I've just shown. Next, I'm going to show you how to rebake your ID maps if you want to change the actual ID map so that we can modify the areas where our materials are showing up. So if we go back to mesh maps and set it to ID, you can see that every part on this body, or most of this body, is actually green, and I do want this top piece to be orange, same as with this top piece here. So in order to make that happen, we need to go back to Maya and reassign some of the materials. So let me bring up Maya really quick, and then you can see that I have my file open, and basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through my high poly objects, and I'm going to assign the material colors that I want on my objects. So let me bring up the hypershade, assign the metal plate material over here, and then I'm going over here, and I actually need to go in and detach this piece so that I can assign a different material to it. And in order to save us some time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign the material, and then I'm going to come back with a more final material assignment, and we're going to look at it together. So I have now reassigned some materials. Basically the top plates here are part of the orange material now. I have changed the material assignment on these guys here to the red material, and then I have introduced a new material for these elements here, because I want this to be a different color than the rest of it. And as you can see, that is what that looks like right now. And actually in here I probably want to make this just a little bigger, so let me grow the selection here and assign that new connector material to it. Yep, that looks better. And now that I have all of this, all I need to do is open up my outliner, select all of my high meshes, and then I'm going to go to File, Export Selection, and I'm going to export this stuff. It's going to go to my computer, E drive, bake, and then we're going to overwrite the radio high FBX file. Click yes, it's going to export. And once this is done, it's going to take a second. We can actually go back to Substance Painter, and let's take a look at the ID mask again. You can see what the material assignment looked like. Looks like this as of now. And then what we are going to do is we're going to open up the texture set settings by clicking this button here. That brings up the texture set settings, and then we can click on Bake Mesh Maps. And then in here, what we want to do, we want to go back to the ID map over here, and that is the only thing that you want to enable. You want to make sure that all of the other stuff is disabled. And then under High Definition Meshes, just bring in the new file that we've just exported. And then with everything set as you see here, we're just going to click on Bake Lambert 1 Mesh Maps, and then it's going to take a second, and you will see that it will update those material colors, which will allow us to have an easier time with material assignment. So as you can see, the materials have updated. You can see that I've changed a bunch of stuff over here as well, and that was really fast. So if I now go back to material and turn on the dark metal material again, you can see that it has automatically been applied to the new mask up here. Same with this guy, and same with a bunch of other things that I have changed. So this is the way to update your ID masks. It's pretty quick. All you gotta do is go back to Maya, reassign your materials, re-export, go back to Substance, and then, like I showed you, open up texture set settings, click on Bake Mesh Maps, just reload this guy here, and then rebake, and that'll update the mesh ID map, and that way you can just try different material assignments, different material breakup, and it's going to basically make it quite easy to create the materials or the material assignments for your mesh. So the next material I'm going to work on is going to be the metal material for these metal bars here. as well as some of the connecting pieces here. And I'm not going to create a material from scratch for this. I'm going to use a material from 5Substance Share, which is a great resource. So let's open up Google, type in 5Substance Share, and then click on the 5Substance Share platform. And then in here you want to go to the Materials tab, and then you want to go to the Metal category, and then you want to type in Metal Armor, which will bring up this metal armor material by Gaetan. Fortunately, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but this guy has some really cool stuff up on 5Substance Share. So if you're interested, go check it out, see what is done. But this metal material is one of my favorite materials to use for metal in general. So let's just download the material. And by the way, thank you so much for sharing that material with us, Gaetan. It's really helpful. And then once that's downloaded, it'll show up in the down. So let me just bring that up really quick. Here is the Metal Armor SPSM file. Another thing I want to show you is if you go to your Documents folder on your PC, and then you go into the Algorithmic folder, go into the Substance Painter folder, go into the Shelf folder, and then go to the Smart Materials tab, you can see that there's already a bunch of SPSM files in here. And these are the substances that I downloaded, that I've played with. And what you want to do is you can either copy the SPSM file in here, or an easier way is to just use it and then drag it into the shelf in Substance Painter, which will bring up the Import Resources dialog. And then in here, up here, we're just going to set this to Smart Material. And then down here, import your resources to, you want to make sure to set this to Shelf. If you set it to current session, it'll only import the material to the current Substance Painter session. If you set it to project, it will import it to the project. And if you set it to Shelf, it'll import it into your shelf in general, which means you can use it from now on moving forward. So now that we've set it to Shelf, we're going to click on Import. It's going to reload the Smart Materials, and you can see that the Metal Armor material is showing up under the Smart Materials category. In addition to that, it also is showing up here now in the Smart Materials folder in your Algorithmic folder. So I haven't copied it in, it actually did it automatically when I dragged it in here, so that's great. Now to use it, all we need to do is select it and then drag it on the top of our layer stack. And then let me minimize this here a little bit. And this already looks pretty cool. Like I was saying, I really like this material a lot. And then let me actually look at the ID mask again. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've changed the material assignment on this. This used to be white, but I've changed it to black in Maya and quickly rebaked before recording this video. So that's something you might want to do yourself, or you can use any of those techniques that I've shown you previously to reassign materials to your object. You can either paint or use the polygon selector to do that. Now let's go back to material, and then let's right click on the Metal Armor, and then we are going to create add mask with color selection. Go to pick color, select the black material, and now you can see this stuff is assigned to these connecting pieces over here, as well as a bunch of other stuff. Let's play with the tolerance a bit. This one you can probably set to 0.8 without any problems. And this already looks great, but there is another thing that I want to add to this. So let's open the folder in here, and then you can see that it has a sharpen layer on top and a bunch of attributes. I'm not going to change any of the attributes, but I'm going to add a new fill layer to add some rust on top of this. So let's do this really quick. We're going to add a rust layer on top of this edges layer underneath the sharpen layer. So let's just click on add a fill layer, and this one we only want to affect color, metal, and roughness. So let's turn off normal and hate. We might use hate later on, but we'll see. Let's just change the base color to something like this. That's kind of a brownish, rustish color. And then what we are going to do is we're going to right click, and then we're going to add a mask to this whole thing. So let's click on Add Black Mask. I know that this is not showing up here, but you've done it a couple of times before, so it's quite easy to do. And then select this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a generator to this mask. And in here we're going to type in rust, dripping, and then you're going to select the dripping rust generator. And then what we want to do is we want to change the spreading to something like 0.17, so really low value. Contrast can actually be 0, spreading can be 0, drips intensity can be 0 as well. Let's see, drip smoothness, set this to 1. This looks a lot better already. And then the samples we're going to leave at Y, and the position axis is going to use the Y axis. Now that already looks pretty good, but I want to add another levels adjustment to this whole thing. And then I'm just going to drag this up to clamp some of the values. So maybe something like that. And it looks pretty good to me, to be honest. Play with the seed a little bit if you want different ones. Yeah, this one is not bad. It's adding some nice rusty spots every like here and there, which I do quite like, to be honest. Just gives it a more believable feel. So let's go back to the top layer and actually turn on height, and then see what happens if we mess with that value. We probably want to give that a really small value. I feel like even this is too much. Yeah, something like that I feel could work. And not sure if I'm going to leave it like this in the long run, but for now that's good. And if I don't like it in Marmoset later on, I might go back to this. But that's pretty much it when it comes to the metal bits and pieces. So yeah, I think this material looks fantastic. So thanks again for Gaetan for making it. And you know, keep in mind there is Substance Share available for you to download a bunch of materials from, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to create a new material. It's perfectly fine to use these materials as a base and then modify them to your liking, and that way you can just save time. And yeah, just keep it in mind. So let's move on to the next thing. Okay, the next material we're gonna work on is the material for the telephone, and I wanted to use some type of polymer material for it. And just like before, I'm actually going to use Substance Share to find a material for that. So let's just type in polymer up here, and then you can see the gun polymer material comes up. So let's select that. This one is by Alexander Bobryshev. This is another cool material, really convincing for a polymer type of material. So thanks to that guy for making the material. I think he has some other cool materials as well. Looks like he really specializes in maybe guns or something like that. But I'm just going to download this material, and like I was saying, thanks a lot for making this available for all of us. And then I'm going to my download folder, and just like before, I'm just going to grab the material, drag it into my shelf, and set this to submaterial, and then import it to my shelf. And I actually did have it in here before, but you can see that it's showing up now. Okay, now that we have the smart material in here, all that's left to do is drag it into my layer stack, and that applies the polymer material to everything. Let's take a look at the stuff over here. Telephone already looks pretty cool. Let's go in here, open up the folder for the polymer material. You can see at the bottom here there's olive and sand. These are the two colors that I'm not really using, so we might as well get rid of those layers just to keep things simple. Then there's the grain bump layer here, which adds this bumpness, which I like. but I think I have to change the UV scale, maybe set this to 3 so that the scale is a little better. And then here's the damage layer. That actually looks pretty good. Let's see if we want to set this to maybe triplanar or something like that. Play with the seed a little bit, see if we can get some nice looking results. Go back over here and see what this is doing. Let's switch this back to UV projection. Just like the damage that we're getting here a little bit better than what we're getting with the triplanar projection, and I don't see any issues right now with this causing seams. So honestly, I think I'm just gonna leave it like this for now, and then maybe set this to 2.5 or something like this. And we don't really need much more for this. This all looks pretty good. There's some dirt stuff. Might come back to this later on to modify it a little bit, but for now I'm pretty happy with the result. So let me add a mask with color selection. Pick this guy over here and increase the tolerance. 0.8 seems to be a good value for this, and yeah, as you can see, we have a nice polymer material for our telephone piece. Play with these values a little bit more. Yeah, maybe something like this. Want some damage up here, because that's the face that we're going to see in the render later on. I don't think we're going to see much of the lower part. So like I was saying, we're just going to leave it like this for now and move on to the next material. Okay, we're going to download one more material for the screws. So let's go back to Substance Share, type in gunmetal dirty. Actually just type in gunmetal. And then it comes up, gunmetal dirty. Let's download this guy. Made by Shotgun RCAF. He's got a bunch of cool materials as well, some camo materials. So go check out his stuff if you're interested in more of his work. Again, thanks a lot for uploading these. Very much appreciated. Now let's go back to Substance, and then I'm going to go to my download folder. This one comes as a RAR file, so let's just extract it. And then we're going to drag the gunmetal dirty material into Substance Painter, and we've done this a couple of times now. Just set it to submaterial, and then shelf, import, and here we go, gunmetal dirty. Now before we put this in, let me just rename this material to telephone, and then we're going to drag the gunmetal dirty material in here. You can see it applies it to everything. It looks pretty cool. I only want it on the screws, so let's go to add mask with color selection, pick color, select the blue color, crank up the tolerance to 0.8, and that's pretty much all it is. I only want this material to read slightly different than what's already happening here, just because I wanted to break up the specular and roughness a little bit. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this, and leave it as is for the screws. It works pretty well. So let's just go on to the next thing. But before we do, we're just going to rename this to screws. And there we go. Next thing that I'm going to use is the gold pure material, and you can find that in the materials tab, not in the smart materials tab. This one comes with Substance Designer, so just drag it in, and then we're going to group it by pressing Ctrl G. Let's rename this to Pins Gold, and then we're going to right click and click on Add Mask with Color Selection. Then we're going to click on Pick Color, and we're going to select this pink color here. And then we're going to increase the tolerance as well to maybe 0.75. That's actually a little too much. Yeah, but actually it's not too bad. Just 2.5 for now, and then we can modify this later if we need to, if it causes us any problems. But anyway, that's the gold material. Okay guys, next we are going to work on the plastic material for the buttons and the dials, and I'm going to use a substance share material for this as well. So go back to the website, go to Smart Materials, then look for the plastic category, and there is a toolbox plastic material in here that I'm going to use. The author is Pawn's Wizard. He has some cool stuff, so thanks for making all these materials available. Really useful. So I'm going to download this plastic material, and then once it's downloaded, do the same process as before, where I get the SPSM file and drag it into my Substance Painter, and then use the category options that I've used on all the other materials as well. And here we go, here's our material. It's called hard grainy plastic. So let's just drag this into our layer tab. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're gonna create a mask with color selection. Then we're gonna go to pick color and pick this red color. And then we're gonna crank up the tolerance till it starts breaking, which seems to be around 0.48. So let's just leave it there. And then we can take a look into this material and see what's going on. We've got our base layer that is adding the color to everything. That's pretty basic in terms of what it's doing. It's just adding color information. So let's actually make this like a tad brighter maybe, and also give it a hint of a blue so that it just reads slightly different than all the other plastic materials that we've got going on here. Then we've got the noise, which is giving us the bump. That has a bump map. Maybe bring this down to 0.1. Then we've got the dirt. This one is really low. It's at 5. If I bring this up, it doesn't really make much of a difference, and that's because it doesn't have color information turned on. So let's see what happens when we turn this on. Okay, it looks like this. Obviously this is a little much, but I wonder if it's worth adding some color information to this. This is definitely way too dirty. Maybe we bring this all the way back down and then just give this just a slightly brighter color or something like that. Just gives it a little bit more variation, which is fine with me. And then we're going to take a look at the discolorization layer, which is giving us these discolorizations here. Let's see what's going on. It uses the MG grease. Let's see what happens if we play with the levels. Okay, that's obviously over the top. I think we can just leave it like that. There's some nice detail here, and I don't really need more. So that's a good starting point. I'm not going to mess with the material too much. The only thing I want to do is adjust some of the material assignments. Let's see. I want to add this area to the material, so let's just do this first by going into the top layer here, and then we're going to right click and add a paint layer, and then we're going to go into the UV viewport mode by pressing F3. Then we're going to select polygon fill mode, And then we're gonna select this area here. And then if we press F2 to go back, you can see that it filled in this area with the material, which is great. Now what I don't want is this material to be applied here in the center. So let's actually switch to the painting mode. And then right now we can just use the paintbrush with the black color and paint this out again. Unfortunately, it's kind of tricky to do this with this brush, so we're going to change the alpha of the brush. That's done over here. If you see under properties paint, you can see that there's an alpha texture that's being used. If you go into your shelf and look for alphas, you should be able to find a square rectangle, which is what I want to use. So I'm going to drag this into my alpha, and then now it's in over here, and then I can just paint out this area much easier. And the trick is to actually either manually paint it out, or you can use a snapping mode as well, and you do that by just starting somewhere, and then you can actually use the shift key to draw a straight line. So for example, if you want to start down here, just hold down the shift key and move over, and that's going to give you pretty much a straight line. Which is useful if you need to be precise. And then if you actually want to snap the line, you can press Control, Shift and left mouse button to draw out these snapped straight lines, which is useful for operations like this basically. And if you hold down Shift, you can see the options that you can use for the snapping. So just something to keep in mind. So that's doing a pretty good job of it. Let's go back to the 3D view, and I think that's masking out the area, not perfectly, but almost good enough, I would say. Just gonna try to do some more straight lines using the Control Shift left mouse button, and then yeah, now that's a little better. Let's try to get rid of this artifact down here. And it doesn't need to be perfect because the glow material is going to be in here. I just want to avoid having any kind of bump information in here or normal information. So that's doing the trick. That's doing what I wanted to do. I think I'm going to leave the border to the other material. And while we're at it, when it comes to material assignments, I don't like that this is using the plastic material and this, so I'm going to go back to Maya and actually assign the rubber material to these two faces as well as this piece here. So let's do that really quick. Go back to Maya, and then I'm going to select these pieces I was just talking about. Basically this piece here, this piece here, actually this piece here, this piece here, this piece here. Then I'm going to apply the rubber material to these guys, and then let me just bring up the outliner and then export selection, overwrite my high poly file. That's going to take a second, and then once this is done, and you can see the progress bar down here, it's going to give me a little error message, but we're going to go back to Substance Painter. And then we're going to go into the texture set editor over here, or texture set settings, go to bake mesh maps, and then we're going to rebake everything. So just make sure that only the ID map is checked, and then click on bake mesh maps, and that's going to take a second. And if everything goes right, shouldn't take too long, then this this, and this should be rubber instead of the plastic material. You can see it's already done it, done a pretty good job. I might actually go back and apply the plastic material to that ring, but I'm not sure yet. For now, I'm just going to leave things as they are and move on to the next material. I think that's a pretty good base that we have right now. Okay, now that we are done with the plastic material, I want to start working on the display. To do that, just add a new fill layer, and then we're going to group this fill layer, and I'm going to call this new group display. Then right click on it, click on add mask with color selection, click on pick color, and select the screen to mask it to only this area. And then we can set the tolerance to something like 0.2. That seems to be working. And then the fill layer we can just call display base. And then we're going to go in here and change the base color to a blue color. So let's use 0.3, 0.6, and 0. And that gives it a nice green color. Now, unfortunately, I can't add an emissive value yet, and that's because the emissive tab doesn't show up here. The way to fix this is to go to your texture set settings by clicking this button over here. And then under channels, you can see right now we have base color, metallic, roughness, normal, and height. And we want to add an emissive channel here. So just click on the plus icon and select the emissive channel. Then we can close this again, and you can see that the emissive icon shows up here in the material, and then we can just click this, and that brings up the emissive color attribute down here. So let's go in here and then actually give that the same color, 0.3, 0.6, and then 0, and then you can already see that it starts glowing over here, which is great. Now, what I want to do is I want to get some graduation in this. I don't want this to just fully glow with the same value. I want it to glow a little less on the outside and become a little darker. And a way to do this is to just copy this display base layer, hide it, go back to the original one, and we're actually going to turn off emissive on this guy. And then the emissive is still on this new layer. We're going to call that display glow. And then we are going to add a mask to this. And we're basically gonna go and select add mask with color selection, go to pick color again, and select this. And now this guy is only masked to the color that we have here. And if I want to get some graduation, I can actually blur this mask. So it's using basically the ID mask. So it's using this as a mask. So you can see this is the mask that it's using right now. And to blur this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the mask, right click on it, click on add filter, and then we're going to type in blur and just select the blur filter. And then as you can see, if I crank up the intensity, it kind of blurs out the edge over here. And then I can also try to add a levels adjustment layer and see if I can maybe mess with this some more, get a little bit of a harsher transition, maybe something like this, and then maybe increase the blur a little bit like this. And at this point it's just playing around with these values a little bit. Maybe something like this is good. Don't want to do too much, but a little bit is definitely good. I think this might be a good value. Maybe we'll set blur intensity to 1. Go back to the levels. Bring this out a little bit. Yeah, this definitely reads better. And another thing I want to do is add an actual black layer on top that we're going to mask out with the same approach so that we darken the edge a little bit more. So let's add a new fill layer. Let's call this one darken, base color black. And then we're going to do add mask with color selection, pick this color here. And then we are going to add a filter, going to add a blur filter. And we're also going to add a levels just like we did before. And we're going to just invert that. And now this one is actually darkening everything. And then we can also give this an emissive channel and just set it to black so that it darkens the emissive just a little bit. So you can see it's kind of darkening the emissive channel here, which is what I want. And then we can also play with the levels here. I think this is okay. It might be a little strong. Maybe we'll bring down the opacity overall to something like 70. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good start for our emissive channel. We might want to play with that some more later on once we get to marmoset and render it and see if it causes any issues. Maybe it's too much, maybe it's too little. I think I'm gonna bring this down a little bit to 50%. I don't want to overdo it because there's not a lot of a gradient in real life, but a little bit doesn't hurt. So let's just leave it at that for now as a base. Another thing that we're going to add on top is a little bit of noise. So let's add another fill layer, and then we are going to set the base color to this to black and have it only affect the color channel. And then we're going to add a mask to this, and then with the mask selected, right click and click on add generator. And then we're going to drag the white noise generator in here. So we can just select it, drag it up in here. If you don't want to do it that way, you can just select it and type in white noise and select it that way. And then you can see that this gives it some nice graininess, and it's a little strong right now. And then we can just take the intensity of the entire layer and dial it down to something like maybe 30. It'll depend on how this will read later on. But I think that's good. And let's see what happens if we set it to multiply. It doesn't really change much, so let's just leave it at normal. And that's going to be it for the noise on the screen. Okay guys, next I want to work on the text for the display as well as the logo and the name of the radio underneath. First, some housekeeping. Let's rename this layer to grain. And then we're going to select all of these 4 display layers in here, group them and rename this group to glow. And then we're going to create a new fill layer. And we're going to select this color to black. This is going to be the layer that's going to be used for the text, and we're going to mask this out so that it's only drawing the text that I wanted to draw. And the text only has color and emissive attributes. And then we're going to rename this layer to glow text, because that's the text that's in front of the glow area. And then we're going to group this, call this text. And then for now we're just going to add a white mask to it so that it's actually we're going to add a black mask to it so that it's not drawing at all. Now what I want to do next is use an alpha to stamp out the text, and in order to use the alpha I have to bring it into Substance Painter first. Now if you downloaded my tutorial, it comes with the alpha folder, and there are a bunch of alphas in here, and I want you to bring in alpha 1, 2 and 3 for now. So just select those 3 and then drag them into your shelf just like that. And then once you've done that, the import resources dialog comes up. Make sure you set this to alpha and then import your resources to shelf so that they are available for the rest of the time. Just click on import and then you can see that they're in here. I've already actually had them in here before, which is kind of unfortunate because now I have them in here double, but it doesn't really matter that much. I can clean that up later. We can work with this for now. So let's actually switch to the UV view by pressing F3, and make sure to center on this area where I want to stamp in the text, and then select the alpha or 1, and then I'm just gonna press Control and then right click to increase the size of this, and I'm gonna try to just stamp it sort of like in the center of this, maybe something like this. Press the left mouse button, and as you can see, it has stamped in the text quite nicely. And you know, I could do all these things in Substance Designer, but it's just much easier to manage the alpha in Photoshop and then just bring it in and stamp it like this. It's going to make things quite a little bit easier. Let's see, the emissive channel right now, you can see that this is entirely black. I don't think that's a good idea for this. I don't want this to be not emissive at all, because it's still gonna have some sort of an emissive value. So let's actually select this layer again, go to the emissive slot, set this to 0.3, 0.6, and then now that we have that, we're gonna just bring down the emissive value of this. And then let's go to the emissive channel again, and you know, it's not much different than from what it was like before, but it's just slightly more emissive than what it was before, I guess. And we'll see if that's too bright or not. I need to see it in Marmoset Toolbag later on. For now, I'm just going to leave it as is. And now that we've made the glow text, we're going to actually make another layer. So click on Add Fill Layer. And then this text, this time it's going to be fully white. And then what we're going to do is we're going to rename this to frame text, because it's going to be the text that's on the frame. Well, actually, this doesn't even need to be in here. It's going to be in a different folder. So let's actually drag this out. And then we need to actually drag this into the hard grainy plastic material. So we're going to go in here. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add a black mask to this whole thing. And then what we are going to do is we're going to start stamping out the logo, the osprey, as well as the fox tag thing on my text. So let's go back to F3. And then we're going to select the alpha 03, which is the fox tag one. Let me decrease the size by pressing Control right mouse button. And then I'm going to try to line it up with the text here. Stamp it. Let's go back to 3D view. Doesn't look too bad, might be a little big, so let's go back, make it a little smaller. Stamp it again, and then we are going to select the Osprey 3 thing. And this one we're going to stamp over here. Maybe just like this. And I think I actually want this text just slightly smaller. So let's do it like this. And that looks pretty good to me, to be honest. It doesn't need to be perfect. There's going to be glass in front of it later on. So let's go back to the 3D view. And we're probably going to do some adjustments to the text. Let's go back to the layer, turn off everything. Let's see if we can play with the roughness a little bit, if that would make a difference. Honestly, I don't want this to change the roughness, but I do maybe want to stamp it in just a little bit. So let's do negative 0.015, just to give this a bit of a bump. And I think that's good. It doesn't, like I was saying, it doesn't need to be perfect. I just want some text to be here. And I'm wondering if I should actually have this layer in here. Maybe we'll organize it a little bit, just like we did the other ones. Select all of these. Let's call this material, and then select this, call it text, just so that it's like easier to to work with when we go back to this folder later on. And yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I want to see what it looks like in the render. I might move things around still a little bit, or since this is covered in glass, I don't see that there's going to be a lot of noise or damage or anything like that to the text. It should be pretty pristine because it's been covered by glass its entire lifetime. So yeah, I don't think that there's going to be much dust or dirt or anything like that. So I think we can leave it like this for now, and we can move on to the next thing. Okay, next we're going to start working on the buttons. So to do that, we're going to create another fill layer and press Ctrl G to group it. Let's call this buttons, and then we're going to group that in here as well. I'm going to call that glow, and then we're going to call this button base glow. And what we're going to do next is we're going to actually go to the top folder and add a mask with a color selection. Go to pick color, pick this white material here. I'm going to move over here, mess with the tolerance. 0.6 is going to be fine, and that should give us a base to start working with. Now let's start with the buttons base glow, and let's actually change the color to like a light green or something like that. Let's try something like this, and we can do the same for the emissive. And then now we have these buttons that actually are glowing, which is cool, but just much like we did before, we need to work with the glow on this, because right now it doesn't really look any good. So let me duplicate this base layer, let me hide the one underneath, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add a black mask, and actually let me undo that, bring this down, and then we're going to add a bitmap mask. And then in texture, we're going to look for ambient occlusion, and you're going to bring in the ambient occlusion texture from our bake. Now it's using the ambient occlusion texture from our bake as a mask. So let's cycle through the channels a little bit, see what's going on here. And then you can see that there's a slight gradient that's already starting from back to front. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a level, because I'm going to try to have the glow fade out from here to here. So with that levels, we are going to do something like this, and then we're going to invert it. And then we're going to play with that some more and see if we can get some good results. Try to clamp those values in a way where it becomes usable. Yeah, maybe something like this is okay. And this is kind of tricky because obviously it's not giving me even results too much. Just try to use something like this, and then we're going to add a filter. Going to add the blur filter, and then we're going to set this to 1. And this is a pretty good gradient on most of these. One up here isn't too good, but I'm not overly concerned with that. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to bring back the original layer and turn off the emissive on that for now. And then let's see what that looks like. Okay, maybe we will crank up the emissive color here just a tad, and then on the base layer we will turn on the emissive again, and then we're going to go in here and bring this way down, because I do want emissive, I just don't want it to be like overly strong. And so we're going to rename that emissive strong, going to rename that emissive weak, and then we're going to duplicate that layer and we're going to just call that darken. And on this one I'm going to turn off emissive, set this to black, and then let's see what's going to happen with that. That should darken the connecting area here a bit. I thought that might look good, but now looking at it, I actually don't think it's needed. So let's just leave it at this for now for the base glow for this. And like I was saying with this stuff as well, we're gonna have to take a look at this in Marmoset once we render it, and then we will do some adjustments to all of this and see if these are the correct values. Okay, next we are going to add the black areas on top of these buttons that is going to serve as the base for the text. So let's add a new fill layer in here, and we're just going to group that, call it text, and then we're going to call that text base. Then we're going to go in here and actually set the base color to black, and then we're going to add a black mask, which is going to mask everything. And then we're going to press F3 to go into UV mode, and then we're going to draw in the areas where I want the black material to appear. To do that, I'm going to use the polygon fill option, so I'm just going to click over here, and then I'm going to start just selecting these polygons here in the middle. And the way that I've created my low poly object is actually going to correspond nicely with where I want these black areas to be. So I'm just going to go through here and draw these in really quick. It's pretty cool. I'm going to press F2 to go back to 3D view, and you can see that it has painted in these guys nicely. And to blur it out a little bit, I'm going to add another filter. I'm going to add the blur filter again, and I'm going to set the blur intensity 2.1 just to smooth out this edge a little bit. And then let's see what else we can do. Don't think we need the height channel on this guy, but we can leave it on for now. Emiss if we need. Let's just maybe bring up the value just a little bit so that it's not fully black. And then let's play with the roughness just a bit. I think this is actually okay. We don't need much more, but we might be able to just add a little bit of noise later on. I'm not really sure if we need it now. I want to actually bring the text in first, just to see how noisy things are going to become if I start messing with like material attributes on this guy. So let's just start with the text first. Okay, next we're going to add some text on top of this. So let's make a new fill layer in here. So just click the button for the fill layer, and then we're going to rename that to text. And then we're going to give this a white color, which it already has, and then we're just going to add a black mask for now. Now, in order to add text to this, we're going to go into UV view, and then we're going to use the text tool for the alphas here to put some text in. So go to your resource browser, go to your shelf, and type in type. And then you can see that you can select different fonts down here. I think the one I'm going to use is called Chithura. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it over here into my alpha palette. And now the cool thing I can do now is I can actually just change this to whatever I wanted to say. Let's say something like STU, and then it shows up as an alpha, and then I can just drag it on things. And also you can specify if you want the type to be regular or bold. And for this guy here, we're going to go with bold. And then there's a bunch of different options like alignment, position, and things like that. But for now, we're just going to go with what this is, and we're going to start with the text for the big buttons. So the one on the left is the volume button, so let's just type in VOL. I'm going to make this a little smaller. I'm going to try to find the center and just stamp it on here. And then we're going to go with PRE for the other side. Try to find the center, paste it in here, and then this one is going to say clear. Try to find the center, paste it, and the other one over here is going to say ENT, paste it. Let's go back to 3D view. Looks pretty good for now. Let's see if it's aligned properly. Yeah, it seems pretty good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start with the numbers first. So let's go with number 1. Put that in here. Number 2. Put that in here. Number 3. Oops. Let's undo that really quick. Change the alpha, so let's drag it in here again. Number 3. Type bold. Oh, I actually just switched to the eraser mode. So let's go back to the paint mode and then keep going with the numbers. Sometimes when you press 3 on the keyboard by accident, or 1, 2, 3, it toggles through the different mode. So paint, erase, and then polygon fill. And yeah, when I typed in the 3, I must have not hit the field correctly, which caused what was just happening. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. And then 0. And then what we want to do as well is see if we can get the forward and backward icons. These might not be the best ones for this. I'll see if I can find some different ones. Let's try arrow simple. Drag this in here. Just change the light by using shift right mouse button, which wasn't intentional. Actually, I wanted to rotate the alpha, but I actually need to rotate it pretty precisely, so let me just type in the value. So something like this. Try to find the center. This one actually goes over here. And then -90. Or actually 180. 270, I guess. And put this in over here. Let's press F2, see what that looks like in 3D. Looks pretty good for now. It seems to be aligned reasonably well. So let's start the next round of text. So let's type in type again. Select our font. Drag this over here, make sure that it's set to bold, and then the next one we're going to do is called ABC call, and then we're going to have to change the angle to 0, and then here you can see it doesn't pick up on the second line, which is kind of unfortunate. So we are going to have to basically manually do that stuff that we're doing. So I'm going to do ABC and then another one that says call right below it. Next one is DEF. And then LT. Next one is going to say GHI. And then mode. And then we're going to have JKL. And we're going to try to use SQL for the second line. And I'm eyeballing things here. It's not super precise. Sometimes would like to do these things in Photoshop, but like I was saying, it doesn't need to be 100% precise, and these things are going to be pretty small later on, so I don't think people are going to notice if it's not exactly aligned on each line. PQR. This one has an arrow as well, but I'll do that later. STU, OPT. Okay, these are the main ones, and then we do need the arrow again. Let's go with the arrow symbol again. And this one actually goes here. And then oh, that was the wrong value actually. There we go. Okay, let's press F2, see what that looks like. Actually looks pretty good to me. Not overly concerned about the alignment, to be honest. Yeah, it looks fine, so let's go back to the main layer and actually add some negative height information to this. Yeah, I think that's starting to look pretty good. I think I'm gonna go back to the text base layer and actually crank down the value just a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's save it here and move on to the next thing. Alright guys, now that we've taken care of these details, I want to add some more text to the body over here and around the buttons. To do that, just like we did before, we're going to add a new fill layer, right click on it, add a black mask to mask everything out, and then let me just go in here and crank up the base color all the way to white. And then what we are going to do is we're going to go into the mask layer, and then we're going to type in type. And then this time we're going to select a different font. We're going to select the font Orbitron down here. So I'm going to double click on that, set it to bold, and then we're going to start typing in some numbers and stuff. The reason why I changed the font is because I want the markings on here to look a little bit more militaristic, and I like the numbers that this font has. Like I like the diagonal that's inside of the 0. It just makes it look a little bit more military to me instead of the more clean font that's on here. So like I was saying, let's start out and type in USB as text over here. So USB, and I want to basically stamp this on here, and I could do that in 3D view, which works fine, but I like doing it in UV mode by pressing F3, so I'm gonna cycle to the UV mode by pressing F3, And then I'm gonna make this just a tad bigger, and then paste this down here. And then for the other side, we're gonna type in GPS, center it, paste it here. Let's go back to 3D view. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. And then we're gonna do another one, call this audio. Stamp this down here. And then I want to do some like random greeble text, I guess. So let's do JB here, JB here, and then we're going to do some numbers. Unfortunately, you can't do multiple lines here. It only takes whatever is in the first row. So we have to manually stamp it on there. It's just not that big of a deal. You can just eyeball the distance between the lines. Let's go back into 3D view, see what that looks like. Yeah, it's pretty good. The text doesn't need to be overly big, to be honest. So yeah, we've got some stuff over here. Let's move on to the side. Next, I want to work on this over here, and I'm going to bring in another alpha to put on the volume slider around this. Before we're going to do that, we are going to rename this layer to text though, and then we're going to duplicate that, make another layer called decals, and then on this one we're just going to go ahead and add a black mask so that it clears the information that has already been in there. I don't want redundant information on both layers. So this layer is empty and this one just has the text on it. So the decals layer is just going to get the decals. Now to bring that decal in that I want to use, just like before, we're going to go to the tutorial folder, into the alpha folder, and drag in the alpha 04. That's going to bring up the import resources dialog. Make sure to set it to alpha and then import to shelf. Click on import, and now you can see the alpha 04 is going to be here, which is great. And I kind of want to snap that on here by using the left mouse button, but as you can see, it's not rotated correctly. So if you go over here, you can actually drag the slider, and by doing that, it rotates this alpha around. And I think we're gonna maybe use something like 330. Let's see what that would look like. Yeah, it's probably pretty good. And let's go to UV view to actually stamp this on. It's gonna be over here in this area. Let's decrease the size so that it kind of matches the circle here, and then just gradually bring it back out. I feel like something like this might be good. So let's stamp it. Click on F2 to go to 3D view. I think that looks pretty good. Let's look over here what it looks like with the button. Yeah, not too shabby. Maybe we're going to rotate it just a bit so that it doesn't cut into this thing too much. So let's actually undo, try 320. Oh, maybe 325. And then we're going to go back to UV mode. Stamp it. Oops. Misclicked here. Stamp it again. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's not ideal 100%. Maybe we can actually bring it in just a little closer. So I'm gonna control right click to scale it down. And then stamp it again. And that looks a little better when it's a little closer. And then we're actually gonna go back and type in type. We're gonna go back to our Orbitron font, change the rotation, go to the text layer, and then I want to make sure to set this to bold, and then we're going to type in vol for volume, and we are going to stamp this down here. Could actually be a bit bigger. It doesn't look too bad. So another thing I want to do is I want to have on and off up here. So let's see if we can implement that. To on, and then we're going to do off just down here. Pretty good. And then we can go back to the decals layer. Let me see what size I'm actually using on the text right now. It's 1.99. Just to remember to be consistent. Actually, let's just continue with the text for now, because here I want to have 3 positions for a slider. So we're going to type in 01. Change the size by accident. Let me set this back to 1.99. So we're going to do 01, 02, and 03. Oops. Something like this. So we can have 3 positions for that slider, and then we're going to go back to the decal layer, and then let's just type in square for the alpha, select square rectangle, and then let's see if we can draw in some lines for this. I wonder how big to make this, maybe 0.15. Looks still a little big. This is probably better.